Okay, students, I'd like to go over 3 of my favorite watercolor artists with you and how they capture the feeling of a place. Andrew Wyeth is definitely my favorite watercolor artist. He was around from 1917 to 2009 and mostly created paintings in Pennsylvania and Maine. This painting, called Evening at Kerner's by Wyeth, is one of my favorites in its way of controlling the viewer's eye. You can see the line and value draws your eye to certain areas, and you tend to only look in those spots. But if you start to look more deeply at it, you will see that there are a lot of areas where he's really just either left it as just a flat wash, or he hasn't done really any detail work. He's just controlling where you look to trick you. In this example, called Fence Line, the way that Wyeth paints only those details that are important to draw the eye is even more obvious because of it being a snow scene, where grasses and other things are sticking up out of the snow. In this example, called Fields of Broad Cove, you can see where Wyeth has used brush strokes to create the impression of grasses, but that the darker values and the deeper details further back in the painting draw your eye to the point where you don't even notice that they're not very detailed or clear. Winslow Homer is another very skilled watercolor artist and famous watercolor artist who's around from 1836 to 1910 and also mostly created paintings in Maine. This one, called Pickering Fishing, is a great example of using bright colors in the foreground and muted colors in the background to create the illusion of space. In this one, called Young Ducks, you can see that Winslow has created almost a black and white to the neutral tones in the background, and the only really warm colors that you see are on the figures and the canoe. This is another great example of Winslow using bright, warm colors in the foreground and more details and muted, less detailed trees in the background and just the impression of trees to create a great illusion of space in this forest scene. Maud Durland is a contemporary artist, meaning she's currently making paintings, and she lives in Portland, Oregon. Many of her paintings are painted in California and Italy. She prefers Tuscan scenes. This Carneros painting is a great example of using bright yellows to make the impression of a bright sunny day, and then more muted colors as you follow the lines of the vineyards back into space. This wonderful painting, called Glade, is another great example of using really close-up details in the front and then very muted details in the back to create the illusion of space. In this great painting, called September Afternoon, you can see where movement is created through the brushstrokes, leading your eye back towards the back of the painting, almost as if wind is rushing through the grasses. Also, you can see the way that the colored tones lead you back. You can go to watercolorpainting.com to read more about Andrew Wyeth, Winslow Homer, or Maud Durland, and many other artists that have been profiled there. I highly recommend it. Now that you've learned a bit about some famous watercolor artists, I want you to choose your favorite painting, either from the ones that you've seen in my presentation today, or from your own research, and then write about it in Slack. Use the link to get there.
Created using Powtoon.